So what you've got here is a discussion on innovation. From my perspective, innovation that goes on inside organizations. A lot of people talk about innovation as a policy issue. Governments talk about the need for more innovation. They talk about the need for more investment in companies and so on. What I'm interested in is how do we actually create innovation within an organization? And there are many misconceptions about the concept of innovation. I come across people who tell me that innovation is about creating something radical. It's about creating something that's never been seen before. But the reality is that 99% of innovation is fairly mundane, it's continuous, and it's incremental. But if we look at if we want to try and understand innovation, there's no better place to start than the normal dictionary. And if you look at the dictionary, it says innovation is the process of making changes to something established by introducing something new. Okay, it's that simple. Making changes to something established by introducing something new. It doesn't say that it has to be a product. So innovation can happen to services or it can happen to processes. For example, services in a hospital. We know many hospitals in Canada and America and even some in Ireland that are well known for their innovation. They may not use the word innovation, but they've improved their process to such an extent that people choose that hospital over other hospitals. We know that certain universities are better than other universities. We know even that some charities are better than other charities. One of the things that fascinated me recently was these charities brought out this idea. In the past, charities would just ask for money and expect you to sort of give money on the basis of some sort of altruistic sort of feeling. But recently, in the last couple of years, charities have brought out this card where instead of giving money, you buy a pig or you buy a horse or something for a village in Africa. And of course, this was such a fantastic idea, a fantastic innovation, that those charities that use this technique suddenly saw a massive increase in their revenue. So making changes to something established by introducing something new, the newness of it is not necessarily radical. It's not necessarily the next iPhone. We know the iPhone was built on previous technologies. Very often, innovations are very incremental, very small. For example, in the manufacturing sector, most of the innovations are small, incremental innovations. They make small changes to assembly lines, or they make continuous improvements, they call it, to the different processes. But that definition is not enough on its own, making changes, because change, as we know, can be positive or negative. You can make a mistake. It still constitutes a change, but it could be a mistake. And I think we need a small addendum to the definition. And the addendum I would put on it, which is very commonly accepted, is making changes that add value to customers. Okay, and customers in the broadest sense. Patients are customers, students are customers. I'm a customer of the computer services department in my university. So customers are anybody who find value in the product or the process or the service. Of course, value is a very relative thing. Value is something that we perceive. It's not something that's easy to measure in a lot of people. So innovation is about making changes to something established by introducing something new that adds value to customers. And if there's one concept that you bring through your entire life, it's how do you add value. And what's very interesting about the concept of value is that 10 years ago, our concept of value was based on things like fast cars or profits or whatever. The concept of value is changing. It's changing to something much more egalitarian, much more long-term, value around the environment, value around energy consumption, value around, equality. These are the types of values that people are now expecting. Not everyone, of course. We're probably in one group here that probably understands that, but there are many people in America and Ireland that still value other things. But the key thing is that we're adding value to people, that people perceive that there's value. And whether you go to the £1 shop or the €1 shop where people sometimes go, or you go to a very expensive shop in Paris, to buy really expensive chocolate, if it's value, if people perceive it as value, then that's an innovation. So what it's doing in your head here is you're saying, does that mean everything is innovation? And the argument I would make is any company that currently exists because of a current or past innovation. If it's currently there, if it hasn't been wiped out by its competitors, like a university or like a hospital or like a charity or like a commercial company, if it hasn't been wiped out by its competitors, it's here because of an innovation it's had either currently or in the past. We know many companies that have stopped being innovative. Like there's a company in this town here called Digital, and they used to make computers. They were the second largest computer manufacturer in the world. They don't exist anymore, and they don't exist because they didn't make changes that added value to customers. They had lots of customers at one point, but whatever changes they did make, customers did not value them. Now, so we're talking here about making changes to something established by introducing something new, okay? And that new can be radical, or it can be, we understand the radical stuff, but most of the time it's fairly incremental, it's fairly small, okay? And sometimes a very large number of small changes end up being a fairly radical change for an organization that adds value to customers, and that's a perceptive value, something that they perceive, okay? Just the same way of fast cars, we perceive that to add value. Some of us perceive that to add value. But there's one other small addendum required to this definition, right? Because innovation can be accidental. Companies can come up with a good idea, kind of a serendipitous or just a once-off type concept. And I like to think of innovation as being more of a process of continuous change, a continuous positive change. And the way I would articulate that is to say that innovation is about creating something new that adds value and then learning from the process so that it can be repeated continuously. So when people ask me about innovation, I say it's a state of mind, it's a process, it's an evolutionary process that continuously comes up with ideas. And some of those ideas, not most of them, some of those ideas are going to add value to customers. And we know from research that we need probably 100 ideas to come up with one idea that ultimately adds value. So if you look at something like the Concorde at some point in its past was adding value to some people. Companies weren't making profit, but there was a lot of other issues going on, such as image, risk, speed, and so on. People were willing to pay a lot of money. But of course the Concorde no longer exists, except in the museums, okay? It's an innovation that has gone through its life. It wasn't there at some point in the past. It then was there, and it was being used by certain fairly wealthy people, and now it doesn't exist anymore. So innovations are also things that have life cycles, and in the same way that digital's life cycle as an organization has ended, you can be fairly certain that many organizations that we now know, perhaps Apple, perhaps Microsoft, will reach the end of their life at some point. And the nice thing about innovation is that there's always going to be something new to replace the previous innovations, whether they're products or services or processes, or whether they're entire organizations. Take the pencil, for example, a very humble pencil, right? We all use the pencil, right? It was invented about 500 years ago. Someone decided, yes, get a piece of lead, put it in between the piece of wood. Your hands don't get all dirty, and you can sort of sharpen it and so on. This is great. It's still an innovation. Proof is we still use pencils. At some point in the past, it was seen as a kind of a wow, this is an incredible looking thing. But of course, we see it as a very mundane thing now. But it's an innovation which is still in the middle. Well, maybe not the middle, but it's still in its life cycle. So this is my idea of innovation. It's a little more mundane perhaps than the more policy related innovations, a little more mundane than what some people call disruptive innovations. These are innovations that come along and disrupt an entire market. Innovation is it's everywhere. It's happening all the time. If you don't innovate, your competitors will. And if they innovate and their positive innovations are are very successful, then you're wiped out. That goes for a hospital or a university or an entire society.